Alright, what's going on, everybody? Fred Fisto here, painting once again as soon as I... There we go, peekaboo. Alright, so I'm going to be painting more miniatures, and today I've got a rather nice miniature here in the form of the Emperor's Champion. So, yeah, really excited to paint this. This guy's, pretty nifty. Like, his whole deal is that he is chosen by the God Emperor of Mankind to start kicking ass, so that's what he does. He goes around and he starts kicking ass. So, I don't know. I was kind of thinking about, like, should I talk about the lore of this guy and all that stuff as I paint him? And I think the answer is a resounding yes. Of course, you know, this gets down into a pretty big rabbit hole in terms of lore in general with Space Marines and the Horus Heresy and the fracturing of the legions into the modern day chapters and just the general ethics of the Black Templars, which is the chapter the Emperor's Champion hails from. I guess probably the first interesting bit I'll talk about while I start painting in some of the black base coating is that the Emperor's Champion is not just one dude. It's multiple dudes. It's I guess you could call it a mantle of sorts. I mean, like, it makes sense when you think about it, like, if a champion dies, you know, like, somebody's gonna have to replace him, but it's, like, it changes, like, even sooner than that. You know, like, basically, the whole Emperor's Champion thing started back during the dark days of the Horus Heresy when things were really bad. Some of the Emperor's children betrayed him, and they were pretty darn intent on destroying everything. So they had fought all the way to Earth itself, and due to reasons, the Emperor was sort of predisposed, trying to keep a literal portal to hell from opening up. So he nominated somebody to be his champion, to go out on the battlefield and just start slaughtering, you know, enemy figures of note. And that first guy that got nominated was none other than Sigismund. At the time, he was the first, I think he was the first captain of the Imperial Fist's Legion. And then, yeah, so Sigismund, like, did his thing. He killed, like, a whole bunch of people, basically in, like, single combat. Just like, hey, you, here to kick your ass, and then he did. So, excuse me, I'm kind of, like, working off a bit of a cold here. Again, so Sigismund was the Emperor's champion. And he got up to a whole bunch of killing. After the Horus Heresy, the Space Marine legions were split up into chapters. Sigismund wasn't really happy about this, but he kind of went along with it because the alternative was another civil war. Obviously, that would be no good. So he was given his relatively high position. He was made chapter master of one of the new chapters, you know, the Black Templars in this case. And their whole thing is, you know, enemies of the Emperor exist, we're not going to abide by that shit, so we're going on a big crusade from now until they're all dead. And, like, that's kind of their thing, being relentless crusaders. And for reasons not entirely known, like, various Marines at various times would have visions of the Emperor telling them to, like, don the black armor, pick up that nifty sword, and be his champion in an upcoming battle. And so that's where this sort of Emperor's champion thing kept persisting, even though Sigismund was the Emperor's champion and he eventually bought the farm. So that's just kind of how it happens. Like, usually a Space Marine of the Black Templars chapter will have some sort of prophetic dream in which the Emperor is like, hey, I need a champion, and guess what, bud, you're it. And so they inform their chapter brethren of the dream that transpired, and they're like, alright, right this way to the armory, you get some nifty armor and a big sword, and we'll let you loose. And that's usually how it goes. And it sort of like holds up with the idea of a champion in that, like, there's only one Emperor's champion at a time. And this sort of plays into that thing about where it's not entirely clear whether or not the Emperor himself has ascended into godhood. Because, he's like going into people's dreams and messing with them. Of course, it's also notable that the Black Templars were one of the very first groups to venerate the Emperor as a god. And in life, that was something he wasn't really cool with. But in his current deathless torpor, well, there's not very much you can do about it, practically speaking. So I feel like he kind of has to lean into it. But you know what? Works out pretty well for the Templars. Man, this black paint is... I don't know. It's not cooperating with me today, but I painted like one arm of the chest plate there. Maybe I'm just a little bit out of touch. It's been a hot minute since I painted anything. And I don't tend to paint things black normally. At least not in any great volume. It's also drying out on me pretty quickly. Maybe I'm just dilly-dallying too much, or maybe I don't know. Not getting my ratio of paint to water quite right. Alright, you know what? I'm gonna paint the backpack first, I think. Yeah. Considering most of this model is going to be black when I'm done with it, priming white probably doesn't seem like a good idea, does it? I mean, in my defense, the black primer is not the same shade of black as this paint I'm using right now. So, I'd rather prime it a different color just so it's easier to tell what bits I haven't painted. Because nothing, well, maybe not nothing, but few things are worse than when you're painting something a solid color and, like, you miss a spot and you can see the undercoat. Like, that is something I fear. I have nightmares about that regularly. Excuse me. Like, that's just not what you want to do. So I figure, like, the contrast between white and black would be good here. If only to make sure I'm painting everything. I think I might try using a slightly larger brush. I'm wondering if that might help a little bit. That's one of the things. You need to use the right brush for the job, and I am not always good about doing that. Like, I painted a tank with some pretty small brushes before, and that is not advised. Like, you want to get, like, at least one good-sized brush if you're doing like, the base layer and stuff. And I did not do that, and, like, I don't want to say necessarily that the paint job suffered for it, but I think it could have been better. It would have been easier to make, like, a nice even coat. than it ended up being, because I was painting with too small a brush. Yeah, I'm definitely going to have to give it a couple good coats of black paint to get a nice rich black. Because that's what you want, especially on a big mover and shaker like the Emperor's Champion. Because he's got special armor. And if it's not like the crispest black you've ever painted, like, something's not quite right, you know? So, you may or may not notice, but I'm trying to be really careful around that left hand. And it's for two reasons. One, you might notice, if my camera will focus properly. I might not do that. Anyway, he's got like a little rosary in his left hand there. So that's like a very fine detail I need to be careful about painting. But I'm also going to do something slightly heretical. So the Emperor's Champion is from a chapter of Space Marines called the Black Templars. You might be forgiven for thinking that their armor is entirely black, and by and large you'd be correct. However, there's this little bit in the lore called the Declates Crusade, and there's not much written about it except two chapters of Space Marines, the Black Templars and the Crimson Fists, who are a chapter I largely play. You know, I basically just bought this model because I think it's cool. So, the Crimson Fists look a little bit like this. You'll notice blue armor, Crimson Fists. So, the interesting thing about the Declates Crusade is that the Black Templars came to the aid of the Crimson Fists, and things started to hit the fan so hard that they started to do things unprecedented since the time of the Heresy. And what that was is they were fighting in mixed squads. You know, Marines from the Black Templars would fight in the same squad as Marines from the Crimson Fists, and like that was kind of a big no-no in terms of rules because they don't want chapters working together too closely. So, as a result of this, the Marines of the Crimson Fist and the Black Templars, as a sign of respect and honor and all that stuff, they would swap a little iconography with each other. So the Black Templar symbol, as embossed on their shoulder pad, is a little stylized cross. Crimson Fist Marines would paint this cross onto one of their knee plates, whereas the Black Templars would paint their left hands red, as the Crimson Fists do. And that's just like a nice little thing. Some of my Crimson Fist Marines have done that to show that they're Declates Crusade veterans, and I figured this good, I'd paint his hand red, just because I think it's kind of cool. You know, I don't think that bit of lore is particularly widely known. I just came across and I thought it was pretty nifty, so I try to incorporate that into my army whenever possible. And the more I talk, you know, I'm just kind of avoiding this. I'll come back to the armor later. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to start painting the sword. Now, I might have to get a little bit tricky with the sword here, because the way the sword is described in the lore, it's called the Black Sword, and the idea is that it has a black blade. But it's also metallic, so, you know, you can't just paint it black and be done with it. So what I'm thinking of doing is I'm going to paint it with, like, excuse me. I'm going to paint it with a standard gunmetal color, like I would normally do, but I'm going to wash it with black ink. But, like, I'm going to do, like, a couple washes so it gets it really dark. And then once it's nice and appropriately dark, I think I'm going to go over it with a layer of that same gloss wash that I used on the Spirit Seer that I had painted up for my good pale dusty ink. So that way, like, it gets nice and dark, but it also, it retains, like, a shiny, kind of metallic finish. Alright. There we go. That was nice and easy. I'm just sticking to the blade for now, because the rest of the sword has ornamentation on it that I'll have to take great pains to paint separately. That stuff I want to be really careful with, because it's... pardon me. It's the kind of thing that's really easy to screw up, and I don't want to do that. So, speaking of being really easy to screw up, this is actually semi-unrelated, but I'm thinking I'm going to start painting the cloth tabard. Basically, I'm just trying to avoid painting black because for whatever reason, the black paint is not agreeing with me today. I don't know why that is, but as we all know, the best response to dealing with something that's not going your way is to avoid it entirely. Even though the bulk of this miniature will in fact be black when I'm done with it. So this tabard is going to be like a nice little like off-white cream color, because I think that would provide a nice contrast without being like pure eye scalding white. I'm trying to think of a term there. Yeah, eye scalding, that's a technical term, don't you know? Alright. So the tabard sort of like, it goes like here, through a belt, down here in between his leg, kind of like wrapping around the one side. So, I'm just going to get that one side. See, this paint is going on so much nicer. You know, part of the issue is probably that I'm painting black on white. And by necessity of how miniature painting works, I have to thin the paint. So it's not getting as good coverage as perhaps it normally would. That's probably the root of my problem, but yeah. Isn't that just like the classic human condition? You know exactly what your problem is, you know how to fix it, but you just can't be bothered to do it? Classic. This nice cream color. I'm gotta be careful I grab this miniature. I was gonna pick him up by the sword, but I realized that might still be wet. And I don't want to disturb that because it's looking pretty fresh. There's some little embossed text on the sword, and I don't want to like say I'm a really great painter. I think it's more a function of the paint I was using. But like the letters still stand out despite me having basically just slathered on a coat of like gunmetal. It came out much nicer than it had any right to. Considering it was all of 30 seconds worth of work. Ah. Man. There. Yeah, well, I already got most of the tabard painted. How about that? Could it be possible that I'm literally just this good? Please feel free to tell me how wonderful I am in the comments. I thrive on it. Little bit more beige. Thin that down just a smidgen. There we go. Alright, now just gotta get the bit that's wrapping around the leg. Get any spots I missed. There we go. Probably have to give all that beige another coat eventually, but I don't know. How's that looking? It doesn't look too bad for one thinned coat, because like the normal meme for Warhammer painting is that you want to give it 2 thin coats to ensure that the color is nice and rich. I mean, it's probably more of a rule of thumb than anything else. And it's a good rule of thumb, too. I don't want to discount it, but, sometimes you can get by with one. And having said that now, I'm sure I will be executed for blasphemy or heresy, but, well, you know, the truth will set you free. Right, okay. I'm just looking at this guy trying to find things that are easy to paint. I think I'm going to paint his little holster. In order to do that, I need, let's make it brown, I think. Like brown leather. A leather holster for his sidearm. Excuse me. Oh, man. And, yeah, so I caught another cold. And, like, it's finally mostly worked its way out of my system. And, like, that's why I haven't been streaming lately. Just because, like, it wasn't a bad cold, but I've just been coughing a lot. And it makes streaming damn near impossible. I didn't feel like I could put on a good stream because, like, every 30 seconds or so I'd be hacking up a lung. Oh, man. At this point, it's just a tickle in my throat, but damn if it isn't the most annoying tickle in my throat I've ever had. There, get that little sidearm holster all painted up. Easy peasy. Alright. I might take a crack at painting that left hand. Oops. Excuse me while I throw my brushes. I might paint that left hand now. Just to get it out of the way. Excuse me again. Hope to try and keep the coughing at a minimum, but I'll see what I can do. Alright. you go. Some red paint. I think the addition of this little Decollete's Crusade lore will add some nice color to what is otherwise a very monochrome miniature. I mean, not that it's a bad thing. Like, I think the Black Templars, they're very striking because they're, mostly black with like little bits of white here and there. Mainly on their pauldrons. But, okay, I'm just going to be reckless with the red paint. Just going to paint over the rosary. I'll come back and get that later when I'm feeling careful. Just because I want to get good coverage on the hand and all like the creases on the gauntlet. Because there are many. And some of them are kind of hard to reach. That's the nice thing about painting miniatures. You can go back and fix your mistakes. Because they're usually not, something that'll ruin the entire miniature. They might be a pain in the butt to fix, but they are likely not apocalyptic. All right. Caught red-handed. We'll have to paint a bit more red later for the eye lenses in the helmet, but that's probably not something I'm going to do until the very end. That'll be a problem probably for another day's Fred, because I don't think I'm going to get through this whole model in one day. That would be excessive. I'd be painting for a while. Frankly, I don't know if I have the painting stamina to do a really good job on this guy in one sitting. Because that, I do want to make this guy look really good. He's a special character. He deserves to have a really nifty paint job. And when you're stupid like me, nifty paint jobs take time. Doubly so if you want them to be really good. So, I'm going to paint a bit on the helmet. The helmet's all black. I'm going to try and leave that little laurel alone. Just because that is not going to be black. I'm a bit undecided on how I want to paint that laurel wreath. Just because the artwork I've seen has it in gold. But at the same time, I could paint it green like an actual laurel. I don't know. I am a little internally conflicted on the matter. Well. Maybe I'll come to that later. So you might notice that I'm really kind of going out of my way to avoid getting any paint on the pauldrons as much as possible. And the reason for that is because when you do actually get around to the pauldrons on a Black Templar, Most of it's actually white. So getting black paint on it is not just counterproductive, it is virtually the antithesis of what I want to do. So, oh, I thinned this paint down too much. But you know what? I'm going to forge ahead just to get a little color on these wide open white spaces. I could always thicken it up with another coat. But yeah, this is like Nuln Oil levels of thinness. Should not have added more water, but oh well. It's kind of one of the things. Like, I feel like paint just doesn't last very long once you plop it onto the palette. Some of that might be user error, I'm freely willing to admit, but I'm gonna be honest, I really kind of don't want to believe that it's my fault. It's much nicer to be able to point the blame at something like chemistry. And, you know, I say that with great love and affection because I actually quite enjoyed chemistry when I studied it. But at the same time, I think it's a convenient scapegoat. There, that's a nice rich black. Probably require another coat still, but that's alright. Yep. Oh man, this is where. Oh boy, rant inbound, guys. I dislike tactical rocks. Tactical rock is that little thing he's got his foot planted on right there, cause like it causes him to be posed in such a way that it makes it awkward to get at some details, and that peeves me off. That makes me a little angry. I do not like tactical rocks. Okay. Well, it looks like you got a little black on the beige there, but you know what? I think I can live with that for the time being. Excuse me. Okay. Time to start slapping some paint on that other leg. It's got two of them, don't you know? Both gonna be black by the time I'm done with this. Little bit of water. Ever so slight amount of water. Yeah. You know, this paintbrush really isn't holding a point very well anymore. Granted, I've put it through the ringer, so I guess it's only to be expected, but I might have to retire this brush just because it frays out something fierce with little provocation. That is not ideal for what I want. Okay. don't know why, but the black paint is like kind of like producing bubbles. Somehow, I don't think it should be doing that. Okay, so we're kind of just slapping down a fast and dirty coat of black here, just to try and get a little bit of coverage on everything, and get a little down and dirty under the backpack. But man. Alright, well, you know, we're making a little progress. That's good, that's good. Ugh. Excuse me while I stretch. This... I think this speaks to the quality of my setup, but it is not super good on my back. And you know what? I'm getting kind of old. I might have to... I don't know. I'd have to invest in a good chair or something. Okay, let's see. Yep. A little bit of the inner thigh that I neglected. Definitely gonna want to get that sooner rather than later. Get a little bit onto the tabard, but tolerate that for now. Alright. Yeah, you know, I'm... Gotta be honest, I'm still not super satisfied with my setup here, just because the way I paint, I kind of like hold the miniature away from the camera. Like, there's no good way for me to like, just like, paint and like hold the miniature like this. It doesn't quite work. Huh. If anybody in chat is much smarter than me, I would love to hear your suggestions on what I could do. Like, I don't know, like, the issue is, I don't really have a good place to mount the webcam. Like, I've toyed with the idea of sort of, like, clipping it to my headphones, but, like, I feel like that's just a GoPro with extra steps. Extra unnecessary steps, for that matter. I don't know. I don't know. It's a tricky thing. Oops. Oh dear, Streamlabs. Streamlabs, no. doing... Oh, did I just... Okay. Thought I stuck my elbow in paint, too. That would have been the crowning irony. I go attend to Streamlabs and get all covered in black paint. Wouldn't that be absolutely wonderful? Ah. Okay. Okay, I think I've got things so that they are not falling apart, I hope. Man, that's always confidence inducing to hear that, I'm sure. Okay. But I painted now. I've gotten a lot of the black done. Whoop. Well, I missed like half his side. What am I doing? Alright, let me just... Alright. Gotta be careful, because this black paint is starting to, like, make a mess of the paint pot. And I gotta say, like, these paint pots from Games Workshop, they really fucking blow. I'm willing to chalk up some of that to user error for sure, but, like, they are subpar, and they get gummed up with paint really quickly. Alright, let me just... Man, you know, I don't know if I got like a wonky pot of black paint, but like the black paint's been behaving maybe not uncharacteristically, but it like I don't know. I don't know. Okay, yeah. It's gonna get a little messy, I think. Okay. You know, I might try mucking about with the sword now. We're gonna try. You know what? yeah, we're gonna do this. We're gonna do it. So, I need to find the appropriate shade paint, which is Nuln Oil. Need to shake it first of all. Need to carefully grab a little bit on my brush, and then just slather up both ends of the sword, or both sides, rather. Okay. So I'm actually gonna hold the mini horizontally here, because the way a shade paint works is that it's very thin, like almost like water in consistency, and what it's supposed to do is it's supposed to fill in recesses to make details stand out by darkening them. And it's doing that for like the little embossed writing on the sword. But it also, like, since I'm slathering it all over, it has the added effect of making the sword as a whole appear darker. But I don't want all that shade to pool near the hilt of the sword, so I'm kind of hoping it, like, dries levelly if I hold it level. This is probably very boring to watch, and I'm very sorry, but, like, you clicked on a Fred Fisto stream, like, you knew it had to be some level of subpar. So, yeah, maybe I like, whoops, just like rotate them a bit. I'm definitely going to do a couple layers of this, because I kind of want to, like, I want to strike a balance between the luster of the metallic paint versus the darkness of the shade. And once I get, like, a nice balance there, I'm probably going to go over it again with the gloss finish, just to make it really shiny. I think that'll be cool. Excuse me. I'm just looking at this guy. Like, there's an exquisite amount of detail on this miniature. Like, the hilt and the crossbar of the sword alone, like, it's like a stylized Templar cross like they use for their symbol, but it's got, like, a skull on it. Pretty sweet. He also has the sword chained to his wrist, which is sort of like a Black Templar thing. They chain their weapons to themselves as sort of like a, you know, hey, like, once you're in the fight, there's no getting out of this, bud. Like, don't even think about dropping your weapons. It's pretty nifty, I think. Adds a bit of flavor, although I feel like the chain and the shackle is going to be a little difficult to paint. But you know what? I'm down for a challenge. So how's it going, guys? How's things going with you? Personally, life has been pretty good lately, but boy, is it not a crazy world. Alright, about to do something risky. I'm gonna touch and yeah, I think that's mostly dry. So you know what that means? Time for another coat. I'll set my brush over there. Put that back. Gonna get the Nuln Oil again. Good little shake. Alright. Don't want to get too much shade, at least not all at once. A nice thick coating. Yeah, how many C's do you want on this? Trick question. I would like a Q. thick with a Q. T-I... T... Oh, dear. T-H-I-Q. Alright, so that is a nice thick layer of Nuln Oil. Just gonna do the same thing as before, I think. Just ensure it dries evenly, because if it pools, I'll have to take corrective measures, which will no doubt be not very much fun. You know, normally I don't do shading like this until I've blacked out all the other base paints, but I'm kind of curious, you know. I'm doing a little bit of experimentation because I don't think this is how you're quote-unquote supposed to paint the sword. You know, you can really paint it any way you want, but I want to get, like, a sort of lore-accurate appearance, but I think the way they did it is they started with a black base, like what I do for the armor, and then they sort of, like... I think they, like, blend in a metallic with the black, or something like that, but, like, to my mind, that's... I don't know, like, that's a more advanced technique that I don't really know how to do. And it also kind of seems like too much work when you can do what I'm doing. Sometimes you have to work smarter and not harder, you know? You feel me, chat? What do you guys think about this music, by the way? I really dig it, personally. Although, I've been listening to it for nigh on an hour now. Probably starting to chafe a little bit. Probably swap it out with something else. Oops, wasn't fast enough on the drop. Alright. I think I'm gonna switch it out with this for a little bit, I think. Some smooth jazz. That'll be nice, it'll be good. Who doesn't love a little smooth jazz? Ouch. There, that should be looping nicely. Alright, so let's take a little peek at the sword. It's starting to get there. I'm thinking one more coating of Nuln Oil will probably get it dark enough to the point where I'm comfortable with it. And then I can put on that layer of gloss to make it really shiny. Of course, I'm gonna give it a little bit before I decide to hit it again with the Nuln Oil. Just because I want to make sure it's really dry. You know, conventional wisdom is, like, if you put shade all over something, like, you leave it alone for an hour, but that's not strictly true. I mean, in this case, I think you can get away with not doing that because, like, the only place for the shade to really settle are in the text. And, like, that stuff will still dry pretty quickly. I'm really digging this song. It's nice and smooth. Nice and calm. Okay. Well, number truth. Wow, that's dry. That is dry like the Sahara. So, you know what that means? Time for another layer of Nuln Oil. Now, if you browse various places on the internet, there's a big meme about how, like, oh boy, I spilled my Nuln Oil, time to join the club, right? I have literally never spilled my Nuln Oil, and I've literally never been in a position to spill it. I choose to believe it's because of my big, magnificent brain, but, in reality, it's probably because I load up my brush with Nuln Oil, and then I close the pot so it can't spill. And, like, oh man, I've got a little devil of a cat. Like, he's spilled paint before, the little rat. But, like, it was relatively thick paint, so it, you know, could have been worse. I do not let the little rascal anywhere near my Nuln Oil. Just because not only would he not hesitate to swat that shit down, it would probably stain my carpets really badly. And, yeah, I'm just renting an apartment. Like, if this was, like, my own rug in my own house that I paid for, I would be marginally upset that I spilled paint on the rug. But at the same time, like, I'd double down and have, like, a painting room rug that I didn't care about getting paint on. Or conversely, I would have hardwood floors or something that I could clean the paint off of. Because, like, all this paint is water-based, but, like, some of it has, like, latex in it. And, like, it makes things a bit hairy. Like, there's this one type of paint that's supposed to emulate blood. So, like, you slather it on weapons and it looks like wet blood, like slick wet blood. It's very glossy. It's also very rubbery, too. Like, it's probably got a fair bit of latex in it. My cat was so kind as to, like, slap that pot over. And I spilled some on a t-shirt and a pair of pajamas. And, yeah, the stains didn't come out. And, you know, kudos to Games Workshop. It looks a lot like blood. Granted, the blood would have coagulated and oxidized and turned brown by now were it real blood, but, yeah. Part of the reason why I bring that up is because I'm thinking, like, once this sword gets all nice and painted, I'm gonna slather some of that blood on it. So, like, this guy, like, he's doing, like, the whole He-Man, you know, I have the power of Grayskull, whatever. Like, he's also having gone through, like, given someone the business, and this is, like, post-killing somebody posing, which is the best kind of posing. Yeah, I gotta say, really like the heroic pose this model's got going on. Excuse me. Looks like the Nuln Oil is pooling slightly. Just gonna spread that out a bit. Yeah, maybe I put on a bit too much, such that it started pooling, because that's it's not what you want, you know. Yeah, I'm thinking at some point I should probably get more royalty-free music than these two songs, what I currently have. Maybe set up like a playlist or something. Not that I'm sick of these two songs or anything, but I feel like I could very swiftly become sick of them. And I don't want to do that because they're nice songs. You know, I feel like I just gotta get a little bit more variety. Excuse me. Right. I'm really vibing to that music, man. It's good stuff. Okay. It's looking pretty dark. I'm just gonna surreptitiously compare it to the box art. Let's compare, shall we? I don't know, maybe you can't see in the photograph, but like the sword looks kind of black as opposed to what I've got, which is kind of black. Obviously metallic, but still kind of black. Okay. Well, time, I think, for the gloss. Now, the gloss one, I want to be especially careful with because if it forms any bubbles, like, they'll... or bubbles. If it pools anywhere, even if I, like, break up that pool and disperse it, like, odds are good that it'll form rings where the gloss part of it, the thing that makes it glossy, started to coagulate or something. I don't know. Don't know what the term is, but you gotta be a little careful. This is where the the knowledge that a little shade goes a long way comes in handy. Okay, that is already looking super glossy. See, I I kind of almost want this sword to look like polished obsidian or something. Or not polished obsidian, but obsidian. Obsidian, by its very nature, is glossy and lustrous. Is that the right word, lustrous? Ooh, now I am doubting my 8th grade earth science education. What a dark day indeed. Oh boy, I'm gonna look this up, guys. I want to get to the bottom of this. Obsidian. Obsidian is a naturally occurring volcanic glass formed when lava extruded from a volcano cools rapidly with minimal crystal growth. It is an igneous rock. Okay, so for luster, it is described as vitreous, which I assume is some subtype of lustrous, because I always assumed luster was like a yes-no kind of thing. Like, yes, it's lustrous, no, it isn't lustrous. But, okay, so there's a whole bunch of subtypes here. There's an adamantine luster, which is describing minerals with a superlative luster, such as diamonds. So, things with an adamantine luster are usually transparent or translucent and have a very high refractive index. So that's interesting. There's also a dull luster, which is little to no luster due to coarse granulations which scatter light in all directions rather than in a unified direction, thus giving it a luster. There is a greasy luster, which resembles grease or fat caused by a great abundance of microscopic inclusions. Things like opal and jadeite. Interestingly, many minerals with the greasy luster also feel greasy to the touch. That's very interesting. I have no idea why that might be the case, unless they are literally like greased down and we're all being played for fools. Alright, so there's a metallic luster, which is like, think polished metal. Okay, there's a pearly luster, where the mineral in question consists of thin, transparent coplanar sheets. So I assume that means multiple layers of thin bits of mineral, and that gives a pearlescent kind of luster. There's also resinous luster, which is like stuff like amber. Fossilized resin, as it were. Silky luster. Submetallic luster. Okay. So a submetallic luster is a luster similar to metals, that of metals, but a bit duller and less reflective. That's interesting. There's also... there's vitreous luster, which is glass-like in terms of luster. So calcite, quartz, topaz, fluorite, among others. Well, that's interesting. And then there's a waxy luster, which, makes it resemble wax. Interesting. Man, we're learning earth science today. Isn't that great, chat? Put a 1 in chat if you love Earth Science. Put a 2 in chat if physics is your real homie. Okay, well that's enough Earth Science for today, I think. But oh no, I was still curious about Obsidian. Oh, isn't that interesting? Okay, so Obsidian can produce a cutting edge many, many times sharper than metal. Many times sharper than even high quality surgical steel scalpels. So the cutting edge of an obsidian blade is only 3 nanometers thick or thereabout. So that is ridiculously thin. I imagine if you're monkeying around with an obsidian blade, you could like very easily like cut a finger off and not notice it for a little bit. Or not notice it right away. That is dangerous. So obsidian scalpels actually exist. They're not approved for use in people, but they can be used for veterinary surgery. Okay, so it seems like the big drawback is that obsidian scalpels are very brittle. And if I'm being honest, I think I'd trade a bit of cutting efficiency for not having a scalpel blade break off in my body while I'm undergoing surgery. I think that's a trade-off I'm comfortable with. Well, that is very, very interesting. You know, I did quite enjoy Earth Science when I took it, for the most part. Let's see how that sword's doing. It's looking nice and glossy. Looks like it's dried too. Let's take a little peek at that. Oh, that. Let's do it like that. Ah, it reflects light. Nice. Nice, nice. There we go. That is a blade worthy of the Emperor's champion. How about it? Okay. So now I have to get back to painting this lead. I think we need a bit more work on that sword, and for this, what other color could we use but gold? Seems only fair to me, you know? Get a bit more on my brush. There we go. Nice little dollop of gold paint. Alright. I'm going to try and paint this in a way where you guys can see it, because, you know. Okay, maybe not. I'm just gonna. Gonna get a little messy with the gold because I can always come back and clean it up later. And in all likelihood, I probably will have to. See, one of the tricks to painting gold is when you go over gold with a wash. What you want to do is you want to use a flesh tone wash, something designed for like human skin tones in mind, because it imparts a very rich warmness to the gold. I've gotten some good results by doing that. And you know what? I do declare I'm going to do it again. Of course, I say that like that's some lost knowledge. It's probably pretty common knowledge in the miniature painting world. I scarcely think there's anything I could offer that would be groundbreaking to the field of miniature painting. I'd even go as far as to say I'm not particularly good at painting. I just enjoy doing it. So yeah, certainly no pioneer in the field. But if I can share some of the tips that have worked for me, all the better. Yeah, I might go and paint the laurel while I'm at it. Which is just my way of saying I think I've decided on gold after all. Excuse me. You know, one has to stop and think. This guy right here is the Emperor's champion. The Emperor had, like, this splendid, absolutely magnificent golden armor. Why does the Emperor's champion wear black and not gold? And I know what you might be thinking. You might be saying, Ian, or rather Fred, whoops, don't mean to dox myself there. Fred, you might be saying to yourself, this guy is a member of the Black Templars chapter, and therefore he has to be in keeping with the iconography and the paint scheme of the chapter. And that's where I'd tell you that's some pretty solid reasoning. That's not quite correct. Because the first Emperor's champion was elected, chosen, nominated, perhaps? Nominated prior to the Black Templars being a chapter, and he still had black armor back then. Like, he had specifically black armor because prior to that his armor was yellow, and the Emperor's like, yeah, no, paint it black. We Mick Jagger now. So I'm wondering why, when they could have just painted the armor gold and it would have been nifty. But who am I to question the master of mankind, the wisdom of him on earth? Just see. Oh, I missed some of the wall. Shouldn't have washed out my brush then. Ah, man. It's starting to get really dark, and I don't think my little lamp here is cutting it. This is unfortunate. I would say I should probably stream earlier in the day, but, like, that is not going to be an option in, like, 2 weeks. That's when my new job starts, give or take. And I'll be working a 9 to 5 again, so... His evening streams are all I'm gonna get. Or all you're gonna get, rather. So I should probably for all of our sakes, devise a better method of streaming. Hi, cat. How you doing, little buddy? Coming to see what I'm doing? I'm painting, and I do not need your help. Alright, painted the laurel. There we go. Yeah, I've gotten like the basics done on this sled. That's not too bad. Oh dear. Oh, I have begun throwing things again. Other paintbrushes. Yeah, I think I'm gonna have to do some solid reorganizing how I want to do these streams. But, you know what? I think I made some solid progress on this, lad. And I think the subsequent coats of black are going to go on much smoother than the first one. So I think time is on my side in that respect. Oh man. I am tired even though it's scarcely 8:30 where I'm at. That is a crying shame. Never been much of a night owl, but rarely this bad. Yikes. Oh boy. So I'm thinking I might just call it a stream. You know, I got a fair bit done. Painted this guy up nice. Let's see. So I'm gonna have to give him like subsequent coats of black. I'm gonna have to paint that belt. Gonna have to paint that little lantern. I think that's a lantern. Paint the grenade. Paint the iconography. Paint these scrolls. I think this guy's basically done. And then I might maybe do like a little freehand on that little shield there. But otherwise, well, I should probably do some nice edge highlighting too on this miniature. But yeah, we'll think about that. I don't necessarily want to commit because edge highlighting is a pain, especially with all these sharp surfaces. That would be a lot of painting and a lot of fine motor control, and I don't think I have really either prerequisites. But you know what? I think that might be a problem for a different Fred Fisto. So as for now, I think I'm going to call the stream. I had fun, personally. And I really hope you guys had fun too. Hope you enjoyed watching me paint my miniature somewhat poorly. Hope you enjoyed the Warhammer lore. Hope you enjoyed the Earth science. You know, really takes me back. So as always, I am Fred Fisto. If you enjoyed this stream, you know, give me a little follow. I'd love to see you in here again. And I'll catch you guys next time. And everyone.